Good afternoon, everyone, and very welcome to Nordic Welfare Center and part 2 in our webinar series on tactile language, based on the book If You Can See It, You Can Support It. My name is Maria Kreutz, and I am responsible for the deafblind issues at Nordic Welfare Center. Nordic Welfare Center is an institution under the Nordic Council of Ministers. We have our office in Stockholm and in Helsinki. We work in different areas such as public health, integration, welfare policy, and disability issues. Within the disability issues, we have this specific work on the deafblind field. And in this deafblind work, we have 5 networks or expert groups, and one of them is the one on tactile language. They started for about 6 years ago, and they have published a book. If you can see it, you can support it. It's in an English version and a Scandinavian version, and we will put the link in the chat so you can order if you haven't done it yet. During this war, we are having this webinar series within 5 webinars with chosen chapters that will go a bit deeply in each chapter. Bettina Kastrup Pedersen told us about the circle model in the first webinar. Today, we have the honor to welcome Caroline Lindström. She will talk about the partner's contribution with language development in a bodily and tactile modality. And with that said, I just want to welcome you, Caroline Lindström from Sweden. She's the coordinator of the network Tactile Language. Hi, Caroline.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
How are you? Is it good?
Yeah, really good. Yeah.
Good. And I think that you saw all the expectations. It was tools and intersubjectivity. It was inspiration and knowledge. And I think that we will have it all during this webinar and during your presentation. I give the word over to you, and to all the participants, just feel free to put in your questions or thoughts or ideas in the chat, and then we collect them, and then we will have a dialogue in the end of this webinar. So, Caroline, it's difficult to say it in English when we are Swedish. Caroline, yeah. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Then I will just share my screen with you. I hope everyone can hear me enough, or else you can write in the chat for me to adjust the volume or speak a little louder. I will try to speak slowly and clearly as possible. I am very glad and I feel very honored to be sitting here today and talking about this topic, knowing that there are so many that shows interested in this topic. And hopefully we can keep in touch and share our knowledge together in the future. As you know, my name is Caroline Lindström. And I'm a special educator and a counselor in Sweden. I work at the organization called Mogård in Sweden, and also at the Swedish National Resource Center for Deafblindness in Sweden. The topic, as Maria said today, is partners' contribution to language development in a bodily tactile modality. Well, that is going to be the overhead topic for my talk today. And I know that maybe you had the opportunity to listen to my colleague Bettina, who was before me in this webinar series. And she presented this circle, which is called Tactile Language. And it consists of different areas or themes that all is important to have knowledge about and focus on when we talk about language development together with people with congenital deafblindness. And my talk today will concern some of these topics. It will concern the conversation space and tactile positioning, multi-party conversation, and quite a lot of this bigger theme about tactile sign language. And before I present a case study with you, I thought that I was going to give you a short background to the reason that I sit here today and talk about this topic. About 5 years ago, I was in Groningen, a beautiful city in the Netherlands, as you can see in the picture. And I was attending a master program there about deafblindness and communication. And that includes writing a thesis. And I knew that I wanted to write about something that had to do with communication or language development together with people with congenital deafblindness, because that is something that I'm very interested in and wanted to know more about and focus on. And before that, and in that process, I read a lot of literature about this topic. And there was one of the literature that kind of stuck with me, and that was a doctoral study conducted by Paul Hart. He's in Sens in Scotland, and his doctoral study has the title Moving Beyond the Common Touch Point. And in that study, he writes that the encounter between a person with congenital deafblindness and the communication partner is an encounter between two persons who has different sense modalities. And that can create a mismatch in the communication. And to overcome the mismatch, one of them has to journey towards the other's perspective of the world. And since the person with congenital deafblindness cannot journey towards the seeing-hearing partner's perspective, the responsibility and to overcoming the mismatch lays on the partner. And this was a bit of a starting point for my thesis as I was thinking about this. And I tried to illustrate this encounter, and it looked like this. And this illustration is also a part of my thesis. And this is an illustration over the encounter. So you see to the left is the person with the congenital deafblindness, CDB. And that person contributes to the communication between them with utterances based on the bodily tactile perception. And if you listen to Bettina in this webinar series before me, she gave some examples of what it can look like. You could say that is a language that comes from within the person. And in the circle, that theme is called linguistic categories. And on the other hand, you have the communication partner, and the partner has to contribute with elements from an existing cultural language. And with cultural language, I mean the language that is in the surroundings, in the country and the context that they are in. It could be Swedish or English or sign language or any language. And when the partner brings in elements from an existing cultural language in the communication, from my perspective, it means that the partner has to transform their own cultural customs into a modality that can be perceived by the person with CDP. It means that when I assume that most of the communication partners is hearing and or seeing, and that means that we are used to basing our communication and language by our vision and hearing. And so we have to transform these cultural customs that we are used to into a modality that we can share with persons with CDP. And it is very hard to transform speech. So the existing cultural language that we can transform is visual sign language. We can take visual signs and we can make them tactile so we can communicate with each other. And so this was the starting point for my thesis, and therefore the title of my thesis became Contributing to a Bodily Tactile Language by Transforming Cultural Customs. So I had this cultural perspective of language development, and also because language development is not only understanding words or using words or understanding concepts, it's also the communication between us and the social context, being together with other people and conversing, and what forms can we do it in. So it's looking at language development and in a broader perspective, bringing in cultural customs. And in that process, I also read about a research field that is called language socialization. And that field, it's quite small research field, but the researchers within language socialization is concerned about which factors is affecting language development for children all over the world. And so they are looking at different cultures and trying to analyze that, what is affecting and does it look like in all over the world in different cultures. Not to say that some cultures are better than others, just to point out similarities and differences. So I used some ideas from this research field, and also some ideas that they present, which is connected to child-directed communication. And there are a few areas or dimensions that the language socialization is pointing out to be important when we talk about language development and what is affecting that in different cultures around the world when we talk about children's language development. And I created a little illustration over the different areas. So you have the ideologies up to in the left. And that is our thinking about children as a potential communication partner. Do we interact with them or not? Do we talk with children or not? Or is it depending on the children's age and stuff like that? And habitats is an area that is both in a micro level and in a micro level. And the micro level is, for example, if we use different items like blankets for children and wrapping them in or something like that. And in the micro level, we can look at our housing, for example. Here in the Western world, we are used to having houses that look like we have walls and we have rooms in our house. And that means that we can only communicate with other people in the same room. But in other cultures, it can be bigger housing without walls. So that affects then that we can see and hear more people in the same house. Activities is which activities is the children involved in, and how is that affecting the language development. Artifacts is an area that is describing different items that we use together with children that can be effectful for the language development. For example, if we are talking about developing abilities in writing or reading, and it can be different in different cultures. And then we had the participation framework and the semiotic repertoires. And the participation framework, is both about different roles in the communication. In the deafblind field, we often talk about the importance of being in different roles in the communications. For example, you could be the one who talks, the one who listens, and also the one who thinks. And participation framework also includes different corporal ligaments and positions that we use with our bodies together with children, and how that is affecting the language development. And semiotic repertoires is an area that is describing that we use different modalities for communication and language. And within these modalities, we can use different forms. So it can be all the different forms for communication that we have available for us to communicate. So with these areas, I have used participation framework and semiotic repertoires in my thesis to analyze what's going on, and to analyze what is the partner doing, and what does it look like. And when we talk about participation framework, the researchers in language socialization is presenting an illustration about different corporal ligaments and positions that people use together with children all over the world. And they have concluded that we'll use 3 different positions with children in all our cultures all over the world in general. And the first one is face-to-face. And in this illustration, the bigger half circle is the caregiver, and the smaller one is the child. So face-to-face is when we are looking at each other or sitting so we can see each other. And a nested position, as you see in the middle, it can be if we have the child in our lap, or on our hip, or on the back, for example. And side by side is when we sit at the side of each other. So these are, according to the researchers in this research field, this is what it looks like in general all over the world. So I have used these body positions to look at what can we say about these positions when it comes to interacting with a person with CDB, because I thought that the participation framework was important to talk about when it comes to communication with our bodies. And the semiotic repertoires that I also have used is concerning the conversation space and how that is used together, and hand shapes and articulation place. Yeah. As I said, I had this cultural perspective, and that I was curious about what the contribution from the partners look like. And also I was wondering if there was a way to describe this. And then I was curious about if it was possible to describe this in a longitudinal perspective. And to do that, I used a case study. And it is about Martin, who was born in 1999. And Martin is not his real name. It is a name that I have given him in this study. And at that time, he was a student at our school. So I had the opportunity to be with him, and I could make new film clips of him and his teachers and assistants. And I also knew that his communication partners during the years since he was little has had much support from people within the deafblind field. And therefore, I knew that there was some video clips that was saved from before. So I was lucky enough to borrow these film clips. And that concluded a material for this case study that consisted of 9 film clips during the years. And they were from 2004 to 2017. And Martin's age in these 9 film clips were 5, 6, 7, 9, 13, and 18 years old. So it is little glimpses of his life at different ages. And Martin, I don't think I said it, but he is a person with congenital deafblindness, and he also has a muscle condition that, and therefore he is using a wheelchair today. He also got a cochlear implantat in 2004, which he used during his childhood. But as an adult, he has chosen not to wear them. So this was my case study. It was Martin and also 10 of his assistants and teachers during these years. And the method that I used is that I transcribed these film clips, and then I did a theme-based analysis to try to describe these contribution from the partners. And it looked like this. At the top, you see different themes: tactile conversational positions, sign in space and references, articulation places, and articulation, and also quite a few subcategories. So this was a little bit of the background of the reason I'm sitting here and what I am going to talk to you about today. And using these different themes, I'm going to show you some pictures from the film clips. I cannot show you the film clips, unfortunately. I don't have a permission to do that, but I have pictures that I'm going to talk about, and focusing on what are the partners doing in these photographs and what are their contribution looking like. So the first theme is about these body elements that I was talking about before, and then I have used this bigger and smaller half circle to describe what did this look like in the film clips. And up to the left, you see that it said face-to-face two-party, nested two-party, and side-by-side two-party. So we can conclude that the 3 of the body elements that the language socialization said consisted during all over the world. It was also present in the video clips together with Martin. But I also find something else that was a bit interesting. You see in the middle, then there is a face-to-face with a peripheral third person, and side by side with a peripheral third person. And we can ask what is this peripheral third person? Well, when I was going through the film clips, I saw that in the early years, when Martin was 4 and 6, 7 years, he was mainly in contact with one person in the film clips. But in some of the film clips, there were also another person present, but they were not in direct contact with him at this time. So it was another person there, which I call a peripheral person, but he or she was not in direct contact with Martin. And at the bottom, you see that there is a nested and face-to-face with a third person in a three-party and side-by-side three-party. So the development from this peripheral third party, who was not in direct contact with Martin in the early years, there was a development that you can see that in the film clips a little bit, when he was a little bit older, they were all in contact with each other, all three of them. So then they had his Martin had his nested position when he sat in his partner's lap, and there was a third person facing them, and they were all in contact, the three of them. And the same thing when Martin was in the middle and he had two persons at his side, and they were all in contact with each other. So that was the main result when it comes to the body elegance. And then there was quite a lot of results when it comes to the hand positions. And in my thesis, I choose the term hand over hand. And by that, I mean the talking and listening hand. When you have the one talking, the hand under, and the one who's listening has the hand on top of it. And in the film clips, there was visible in the early years that partners used different strategies to help him develop these hand positions. You see 3 pictures here. Martin is 4 years old and is sitting in the lap of his teacher. And in this situation, they are talking about a person which is not in the room, but the person is important for Martin. And they use the Swedish sign for where. It looks like this, where. And this is the personal sign for the person, which is not there. And these pictures is illustrating that the partner is signing where. At the same time, she's in contact with Martin's hand, offering him to be in a listening position. And also to the right, you see that she has positioned her hand on top of Martin's hand when he is in a speaking position. And also she is signing the personal sign when she has her arms around Martin signing. So he can perceive that she is signing without having the hands on top of hers. So that was strategies that I used to be able to develop these hand positions together with Martin when he was little. It was also a variation of this. You see the picture to the left. Martin is in a striped sweater and he is in the nested position in the lap of his teacher. And they are sitting together singing a song. and they are singing this Wheel on the Bus song. I think that many know that song. And as you see that they are also adjusting the teacher is signing open and closing of the door when they are singing like this. And as you see, Martin, his hands are smaller than the teacher's hands. So he is grabbing onto her fingers like this. So that was also an adjustment to the hand positions when he was little, because his hands are smaller than the teacher's. And in the picture to the right, Martin is laying on the floor on a red carpet. And to the right in the picture, his teacher in a black sweater is signing take with him. And the situation is that the person to the left has a slipper on her foot that Martin has discovered and became very interested in. So it is very emotional situation for them when they are trying to take the slipper from the person in a narrative way. And when he gets excited, he puts his hands up and he do like this on the floor. And that means that it is hard for the partner to be in a talking position with his hands, because he's occupied using his hands to expressing emotions. So that means that she uses the talking hand. She takes his hand and signs take with his hand. So that is also an adjustment with his hand positions. And you could also see a development of these hand positions during the years. In the picture to the left, Martin and his teacher had made bird food, which they are outside, and they have hang the bird food in a branch. And in the picture, you see the teacher signing, and Martin is holding on top of her hand, and she is signing bird in this picture. And that is an illustration of that they use one hand also in these positions. And in this picture, he is 17 years. And one hand is also more complex, comparing using two hands. And the picture in the middle, Martin is sitting to the right in a blue sweater, and his teacher is sitting to the left in a black sweater. And they are using what we call a dialogue position, where you have one hand as a talking hand and one hand as a listening hand. So that is also development of the complexity of the hand positions. And to the right is the situation we talked about when he was in contact with two persons at the same time. So they were three persons conversing at the same time. They were also turn-taking signals present in these video clips. Here they are sitting together singing a song, and the turn-taking signals is also visible because when they are in contact and communicating, they are lifting up their hands, and when they are not, they are lowering their hands. That is a turn-taking signal that the partner is showing him tactily. Pointing was also a theme that was visible. As you can see in the two pictures to the left, the teacher is guiding Martin's hand to the what you call to the light and to the slipper in the picture below. So they are directing his hand, and that is the same function as pointing. And when he was 17 years old, there was also a video that was an illustration over where the teacher was using the index finger to point. So you could say that there was a development where in his early age, they used more the direction of the hand, and when he was older, also pointing with the index finger. And when it comes to the touch and positions from the peripheral partner, it was visible that they used position and thinking about that when they were together. So you see in the picture to the left, Martin is sitting in a black sweater, and he has his teacher and assistants on his sides. And as you can see, they have placed their hands quite near him and at the side, so he can choose, he can feel that they are there, and he can choose to converse with them if he wants to. And also, as I was talking about the film clip that they were sharing this emotional situation with the slipper, and they also used the slipper to make it narrative and to talk about the slipper which was present at the time. Another theme that was visible in these video clips and the strategies that the partner used was the use of different articulation places. And the articulation places is where the sign is being being used, or what you call it. So it could be your own body or the signing space in front of the person. And in the picture to the left, you see Martin sitting in a blue sweater and the teacher in a black sweater, and she is signing good to him in good morning. It looks like this, good. And that is the same as in visual sign language in Sweden. And in the middle, the partner is signing drinking to him, drinking, also the same articulation place like in visual sign language. And to the right, they are signing home, also the same articulation place as in visual sign language. But there were also strategies that they used that was a bit more creative. To the left, you see the teacher is signing sweater to him, sweater. And she is placing the sign instead on top of his chest, signing sweater to him. And in the middle, they are using their both their bodies to sign. And in the example, they are signing Martin's personal sign at both of them, on both of them. And to the right, you have the situation with the slipper. And as I said, it was difficult for the partner to reach his hand and talk with him because he was occupied with them. So she uses also his leg to talk about the slipper, and then she uses the sign shoe, which looks like this, shoe, and she places it on his leg, shoe. The theme articulation was also present, and the articulation is the movement of the sign. And it was, for example, large and small movements, different tempo, and different tempo that was used to emphasize things in the communication. Different rhythms, and also a lot of repetitions of the articulation. And the repetitions was between just 2 repetitions up to 17 times. And the picture you see is in a little series here. That was one example of the repetitions who consisted of 17 times. And when you look at the film clip, you don't think about it being a repetition so many times, but when you look at it closely and play the film in slow, you see that there is a little movement in the repetitions. And if you look at these pictures closely, you see that the teacher is altering the position of the finger, and Martin is also altering the way that he feels on top of her hand. So the repetitions is not just a repetition of the exact same sign, that it consists of repetitions with variations of the sign. Like this. When I had analyzed these film clips, as I was saying, I wanted to do this in a longitudinal perspective, and I had these film clips over time period. So I wanted a way to look at it in a more longer time perspective than just showing these pictures from the film clips. So I tried to do a graph that would show these strategies that the partners have been using together with Martin during the years. And it is a lot of text in this and numbers, and you don't have to read it all. I will explain it to you. In the left column, that is all the strategies that I am talking about in my thesis. And in the bottom, you see a timeline with different dates, starting with 2002 and ending 2018. And the blue lines, that is an indication of where in time the strategy was occurring in the film clip. So you see that some strategies was only occurring in his early years, and some was occurring at his older years, and some was consistent through time. And of course, this is not an exact or accurate illustration over all the strategies that the partners have used, because I can only say something about what's visible in the film clips, and they are little glimpses of his life. I cannot know what's going on in between, but it can give us an indication of the what it can look like in a lifespan, and it can also give us some indication of that we cannot use the same strategies all the time in a lifespan. The strategies have to change with the person's development. And as a conclusion, I also wanted to show you this photograph. This is a photograph with Martin and his teacher and assistant. He is sitting in his school drinking hot chocolate in this picture. And as you can see, the assistant to the left is helping him to drink hot chocolate. That is because of his muscle condition. So he needs a little assistant, and he is also following the movement with the hand. And at the same time, he is in contact and conversing about the situation with his teacher, and she is signing hot in this picture, hot, and he is following. So if you think about it in this picture and what it means that he is able to sit here conversing and socialize with two persons at the same time. He is aware of the situation that is going on, that he's drinking chocolate, and that his assistant is helping him. And at the same time, he is in contact and able to communicate about the situation with his teacher. And if we describe it like that, it is quite complex in that way. And the point with this is that I want to point out that if you see the little pictures here to the side and the ears, that is an indication of he wouldn't be it wouldn't be possible for him to sit here in his school in this situation if he hadn't been given these opportunities before, in the years before. So these strategies that they have given to him and have used together with him has facilitated his development for him to be able to, like this, sit here and taking part of drinking hot chocolate and having a good time with his teacher and his assistant. So I really want to point it out that the strategies, all the strategies during the years has helped him, support him to develop and to support his abilities that he has today. Thank you for listening. And if you want my thesis, you can email me. And you can also read the chapter in the book that Maria talked about. And there is also a published article with a minor version of the thesis that is available for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caroline, for your presentation. And we have some questions here for you. I will read them. The first one is from Katerina from Greece. I would like to ask regarding the repetitions. All of them take place at once or over the whole day? I mean, isn't it confusing if you repeat so many times, if you repeat the sign so many times? That's the first question.
The repetitions were both, if you looked at the film clips, the repetitions were both consistent during the film clips. If they used, for example, 1 or 2 signs, they were occurring in repetitions during all the film, in the whole film clip. But it was also the example that I show you that the repetitions occurred at that time when they were signing that specific sign. So it was both. And the how shall I put it? When I talk about this and showing you these illustrations, it can look like the repetitions is very significant and visible, like it's very. And when you look at the film clip, as I said, the repetition is not very visible. But if you don't look at the film very closely and slowly, then you see that it's a little movement. So it's a very slightly little movement, but he is recognizing that and also participating about it.
Mm.
Yeah. So I think it's so very what do you call it? Depending on the context and depending on the person, and if the
and maybe the relation as well.
Yeah.
Okay, and Katarina has one more question. After the partner sign a word, does he or she try with the student to repeat the sign? I think we saw one picture where the teachers sign at the same time with the partner.
You mean if the assistant and the teachers signed at the same time?
I think so.
Yeah.
The partner sign a word. Does he or she try with the student to repeat the sign? I think Katarina means repeat it together with the student, that they did it at the same time.
Yeah. Yes. I think in the early in his early years in the film clips, there the film clips that I have, it's more often that a teacher is in a talking position. But that is because that when he is little, as I said, that hand positions, the tactily, is not established between them. So the earlier age is just uses strategies for him to feel secure and to feel that this is a way that we can communicate. Yeah. So, but when he has them established, he's also taken initiative to communicate in that form.
Yeah. Okay, and then we have another question. It's from Saskia. She asks, were the persons the same over time, or did they change?
No, they changed. They changed
quite a lot, or just few of them?
Well, in this case study, it was 10 teachers and assistants in total, but I cannot know that with his whole life. But they were consistent in the if you think about it, when he changed schools.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was here was a group, and then he changed, and then was a group, and then he changed, and then what it was a group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, then we have another question. I think you have touched it in your earlier answers. The question is, were the repetitions initiated by Martin or the caregiver? What function do you think the repetitions performed for Martin?
In this case study and the example I was giving, they were initiated by the caregiver. But I think it has an important function for Martin, because as I said, you can see that he also is altering his hand position, making the sign, what do you call it, more available for him. Can you put it in that way? For him to feel the sign, how is it produced? And so the variation of the repetition, I think, is important for him to feel that. And also, it is important to point out that the signs that they are making together and in the repetitions, it is always about things that interests him, that they have in common. They are always talking about shared activities or what they think that he is thinking about.
We have some Laura from Italy. She has shared a good example with us, and I hope you can read it in the chat, but I will lift up a question. And it's the question is, can you use party communication with all kind of people? I think that's a very interesting question.
Yeah, if we can use tactile communication with the other people, the answer is yes. I think it's a good way to facilitate communication. If you see a little or hear a little, also it's always a good way to support the communication.
So the key point here that you will lift up is the tactile modality, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then you can have three parts communication.
Yeah.
But it's very important with the tactile modality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also, in that context, you can say that, as I said, he had when he was little, he had a cochlea. So they were talking and signing to him tactily simultaneously. And using a lot of speech and singing together. But when he was older, he chose not to wear them. And you can say that he had opportunity to choose then, because he had a modality that he could use. He could use the tactile modality.
Yeah. And my experience is that even if the person you communicate with don't hear, you be a bit softer in your body, more natural if you also use your voice within together with your tactile modality. Yeah. And then we have a last question before the time is out. Now we'll see. You said it was 9 clips in total, but what is the average length of each clip in order to a good sample?
It ranged differ a bit, but the overall time was about 3 minutes. Yeah, okay. But it ranged from 1 minute to 10 minutes, and it differed.
Okay, thank you so much, Caroline, and thanks to all of your participants for your interaction within this and the questions and so on. And we started with these Menti questions, and then tools was one of the things that you wanted to receive, and I hope that you really have received it and you can use some of it in your daily work tomorrow, next week, whenever. And also inspiration, and I'm sure that inspiration has that you are filled with inspiration now to go out and use some of this. And I just want to correct myself. I said the network write the book, but they edited the book, so there are many authors within this book, but you see it when you order it and read it. And the next webinar is on March the 5th, and then we will meet Kari Sköld Brede. She will present her chapters, chapter number 15, when Trine says, "Grandma, what is on her mind?" We are looking forward to that one, and she will also connect to the earlier presentations during the spring. I wish you all a very good weekend and a good time until we meet again in March. Goodbye.